What's up, guys? One thing I noticed is we love the moves that our athletes make on the court. From the layups to the dunking, or even on the field to the touchdowns. No matter what sport it is, we love all the moves. But have you ever thought about the moves that they make off the court? If you have, you're in the right place. I'm Nafi, and this is Off the Court Moves. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nafi, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Court Moves, presented by Endure Pro. Our dreams is to make your dreams come true. And without further ado, I'll introduce our next guest. Welcome, Mike Morrison.
I had a talk with self, and this ain't self what you gon' do. Shit, the future looking bright, but it depends on what you do. Just believe up in yourself and keep on doing what you do. If you
Appreciate it, man. I'm excited and glad to have you on. I remember we met not so long ago.
Right.
I want to say it was Nick Clark's camp, but I heard a lot about you beforehand in the basketball community.
Wow.
It's a small world. It's big, but it's a small world, man. So Coach, you're here now in South Carolina, but I want to take it back to your beginnings and tell us and for the audience that doesn't know a little bit about your upbringing and where you're from.
I get it out the water, like KD said it best. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. Spent most of my time in PG County, Maryland. My parents moved to the other side of the street so I could go to PG County schools as opposed to DC public schools. I am the son of Elmer and Wilbert Morrison, both hard-working individuals. My mother is the daughter of sharecroppers from Lawrence, South Carolina. That's how I ended up here.
Okay.
My dad is from Waynesboro, North Carolina, but he grew up in Portsmouth, Virginia. They both met in Washington, D.C. and had me. After my professional career, or towards the end of my professional career, I was able to help my parents retire and come down to South Carolina to live. My mom wanted to help take care of her ailing parents.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to make that happen for them. And then some life circumstances happened for me, and I moved to be closer to them. I always wanted to live in the South, even though I lived in Washington, D.C. all my life, the Maryland area all my life, and went to college in Baltimore. I had an affinity for the South because every summer growing up, my parents would send me to Lawrence to keep me out of trouble, to help me get to know my grandparents as well and my other relatives. So it was an exciting time of my life, and so when I had the choice as an adult to choose where I wanted to live, what better place in South Carolina?
Right. So PG County, man, going back to that, like we can sit here all day and say who all the ball players that come out of PG. What is it about that county that's so special, you think?
Well, everyone knows the McDonald's All-American game.
Mm-hmm.
When the McDonald's All-American game started, it was 49 states versus D.C., Baltimore, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
They would take the top 12 players from those three areas, and we would play against everybody else. And it's just a culture. I mean, you can go all the way back to Elgin Baylor and Sam Jones. It's just a part of our culture. Basketball in the Washington, D.C. area is more of a way of life, kind of like New York. And D.C. is probably, to me, has more rich history when it comes to basketball than the big cities like New York and Chicago. But we're not arrogant, boastful type people. We kind of, we just do our work and let the work speak for it.
That's right.
If you look on the bench of pretty much every NBA team, from David Vanderpool to, good Lord, you name them. Every team has someone from the DMV on their bench. To Monty Williams, you just go down the list and there's somebody from the DMV on their bench in some capacity, whether they're playing, whether they're on the bench, or like Milt Newton, who's in the front office of Milwaukee Bucks. And it just goes on and on.
Right.
And again, these are people you won't see on a regular basis. Ed Tapscott, who's been in the NBA for centuries now. Frank Ross, who's one of the directors with the Washington Wizards. You just go down the list, and all these people have a huge effect on the culture of basketball today.
For sure. Now, I always say that there was a edge or something to be taken from people that have the chance to see both lifestyles because you're going back and forth from Maryland to Lawrence each summer, right?
Right.
To spend more time with your grandparents. So did that allow you to see both sides of like the South and the North and the sea? Like what did that do for you?
I found out quickly that most of the people from the North had family in the South.
Mm-hmm.
As I got older and started paying a little bit more attention in school, I realized that was the migration in order to find jobs. But when I came back here, I have an uncle right now, my Uncle Eugene, who's 96 years old, 2 knee replacements, and he works 12 to 14 hours a day still. That work ethic is something that you don't see in the cities. Everybody's hustling, but you don't, everybody got so much stuff going on. You don't see that type of work ethic. My uncles, my grandmothers, my grandmother, my grandfather, all of my aunts and uncles, they just worked. That's all they knew was work. And it never looked like a job to them because they always enjoyed the things they were doing. So circumspectly, it kind of taught me something just from watching, being down here in the summer, that if I'm gonna get a job, do something you love. So
No, that makes sense.
that's how I ended up falling in love with the game of basketball.
So speaking of falling in love with basketball, going back to you being raised in Maryland and sometimes the summers in Lawrence, South Carolina, how did that come about, and when did you start taking it serious, like to go good enough to go to the next level?
Probably about the 5th grade. A childhood friend of mine's father, John Scott, Mr. Winston Scott, took me to a basketball camp that DeMatha Catholic High School and St. John's Military High School had together. Joe Gallagher and Morgan Wooten. Morgan Wooten was the first high school coach inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame. Joe Gallagher will probably go in soon. He's passed away, but very instrumental in all of DC's basketball development. Took me to that camp, and Dennis Scott was also one of the campers there.
Okay.
Danny Ferry, Grant Hill, Tommy Amaker. The list goes on and on of all the people that were there. But it was a camp that accentuated and really taught the fundamentals. It was more about understanding the why of basketball and when to apply it than just the playing. And it was one of the best camps I'd ever been to. Derek Wittenberg and Sidney Lowe were 2 of the honored guests. They were at North Carolina State at the time. And these are 6'1", 6'2" guards. And I can remember clearly, Morgan Wooten stood up and said, everybody raise your hand who want to play college basketball. So me and my best friend, the guy that brought me to the camp, raised our hands. And they said, well, only one of you can make it. Are you willing to outwork your best friend to get there? And we looked at each other and we were like, no question. And me and him competitively just started going at it. Ball handling drills, slaps, taps, and raps every day, nonstop, getting up shots, all the things we had learned at camp, we started doing at home. Now, I wasn't as fortunate as him. We were renting the house we were in, so we didn't have a basketball court at it, but he had a court at his house, and he lived around the court from the park. So I'd ride my bike to his house, and he was my guy. We just balled together, and that, we just kept balling. Then we got to high school, and we went to split high schools because he lived down the street, and he went to High Point High School, and I went to Northwestern. Northwestern High School is the former high school of Lynn Bias and Jeff Green.
Okay.
And myself and Larry Spriggs were 2 other NBA players that came from that high school. So we were rival schools. And my sister, when I was growing up, we lived across the street, and she went to High Point. So when it was time for me to go to high school, I thought I was going to High Point, but because of where I lived, I couldn't go. I had to go to Northwestern. And I really wanted to go to Northwestern because they had Lynn Bias. They had another guy named Brian Waller and Scotty Hardy. A couple people lived in the neighborhood, all former Division I athletes. Brian went to Providence, Scotty went to East Carolina. But the basketball program there was just stellar. They were the only public high school that could compete with the DeMathas, the St. John's, the Carrolls. These are all male private schools that were infamous for their basketball programs. Amazingly, again, these are all boys schools, Carroll, St. John's, DeMatha. If you were a good basketball player, you were recruited there. But again, they couldn't get all of them. So we would compete against those schools in high school, and it was It was one of the most amazing things growing up because you took for granted. Where I grew up, or where my parents lived before they moved to South Carolina, was in Northeast Washington, D.C., off of Oglethorpe and Eastern Avenue. There's a metro station called Fort Totten. A lot of my family lived off 12th Street, which was where John Thompson lived.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin was
From
John Thompson's,
Georgetown?
yeah,
Okay.
Big John, was John Thompson's manager when he was a high school coach. And he actually helped John when he was at Georgetown sometimes in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And we, with John Jr. and Ronnie, we all spent a lot of time together as kids. So, you know, you took it for granted knowing John Thompson as just
Yeah, because I'm over
guy.
here looking like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's a legend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
We had access to him daily.
had access to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going into playing high school ball and being a standout, well, I can only assume you and your best friend that was from the camp were going at it.
Yeah.
You guys went to your respective high schools. What was the transition in going into selecting a college and playing at the next level?
Well, see, that's interesting. I wasn't a standout in my high school.
Okay.
I was probably the fourth option on our team.
Okay.
I played with two guys that were 6'10". David Gregg, who unfortunately was one of the persons in the room with Lynn the night he died.
Okay.
And Brian Tucker.
You don't hear about that, but
No, you don't hear about the aftermath of the things around it, but that's another story for another time. But
yeah.
Brian Tucker went to Villanova. And then we had another guard named Clinton Venable. Now, all three of these guys were all Met selections when our senior year well, Brian didn't get to play because David was already selected. And Brian went and played in like the Dapper Dan up in New York. And David played in the Capitol Classic. And I was just an afterthought. You know, I was a 6'1", 6 foot athlete.
An afterthought that made it to the league. Not so bad.
Well, you know, it's motivation, you know. I always believed in my talents and my abilities, but I understood waiting your time and working for it. So with David and Brian going to Villanova and Maryland, it was just more fuel for me. And Loyola was a school that came down and recruited me going into my senior year, but it was conditional. Now as a college coach, I understand what conditions could look like.
Right.
Here's a player that they thought, you know, had potential to play at their school, but academically, coming from a public school, going to a Jesuit university like Loyola, whose academic requirements were, you know, pretty high, they couldn't make exceptions back then because I wasn't one of those 5-star players. So literally the coach came down that summer and sat down with my parents and said, if Michael can make the honor roll all 4 semesters, keep above a 3.0. Now, I'm a kid that struggled in school because I was dyslexic. Also had ADHD before it was diagnosed. And I had a severe issue with comprehension and reading. Was put in alternative school from the 8th to the 9th grade to try to help me with that. And then got back into public school. I had never made a 3.0 in anything. But it's amazing how something that you love can influence you to do something that you don't think you can do. Made the honor roll all 4 quarters. Then they came up with another stipulation after that. Well, we have to see if he could do it at our school. So you have to take 3 college courses over the summer, and if you pass those with a C or better, then you'll get admitted. So, you know, I hear these players today signing letters of intent, you know, announcing all the schools, and I'm like, wow, that never was me. I had 2 schools that was interested in me. The University of the District of Columbia, who was coached by my godfather, Will Jones, which was Division III school at the time, and Loyola. That was it. Those are the only 2 places that offered me opportunities.
Loyola
of Maryland.
Maryland,
Yep,
okay.
Loyola University of Baltimore, Maryland. There's 4 of them.
Yeah.
So I had to, you know, I had to go with what I thought was the best option. Actually, my mother chose for me because Loyola educationally is well respected in the DC area, like with Georgetown or with Johns Hopkins. And Loyola and Johns Hopkins are like right next to each other location-wise too.
Right.
So she says, you know, you're not gonna play basketball all your life, so you need to try to get into Loyola.
For sure.
So I buckled down, I studied real hard my senior year, and I made it.
For sure.
got up there and passed all the summer school courses with 2 B's and 1 C, and they accepted me. And you know, it wasn't smooth sailing after that. I still spent a couple of semesters on academic probation, getting used to the academic rigors and requirements and the study halls and the different things that you have to do in order to maintain your grades. But it was all worth it.
So how does a person from Loyola make it to the NBA?
God, you know, I wish I could take credit for it because, again, I wasn't a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star. I didn't have a star. I was just a player on the high school team that, you know, because I went to that camp, I started working. I never had a trainer. I never had somebody to take me in the gym and get me ready. And that's the type of trainer I am. If I give a kid a drill, I want to find out how much they're going to work on it when they're not around me. If you come back and you haven't improved, it's because you haven't been working. I'm not going to waste your parents' money. I've lost a lot of clients like that because my forthrightness is from experience, not from something I've seen somebody else do. It worked for me. So I feel if it worked for me and I'm nobody special, it could work for anybody.
For sure.
You just have to be willing to put that work in. So while at Loyola, I came very friendly my freshman year, the end of my freshman year with the janitor. So friendly, he gave me a key to the gym so I could let myself in. He got tired of opening it up for me at 5 in the morning. He was like, look, man, I got other things I need to do besides you knocking me down to get in this gym.
All right.
You lose this key, they're going to come and get you, not me. I'm going to let them know you stole it.
All right.
So he entrusted me with the key, and man, that's just the, I don't want to say that's the story, but that's the blueprint of how I began. I had a routine. I had a regiment that I went through daily, and I wouldn't miss it, sometimes twice a day. Because of all the studying I had to do, I didn't have a typical college life. You know, wasn't a lot of partying, wasn't a lot of road tripping. I had to study and play ball. That's it.
For sure. So you later got drafted, and correct me if I'm wrong, was it Phoenix?
Phoenix drafted me. It was the first year they had went to 2 rounds. The year before they had 3.
Right.
The year before that they had 7. So they announced this, David Stern announced, you know, cutting the amounts of draft picks. And, you know, my junior year was probably my best college season, and Rick Smits played in our conference. And I had gotten a lot of recognition, but unlike today, I hadn't personally spoken with any NBA teams, but a lot of people were hearing the buzz, seeing the write-ups, and they were like, man, you should come out now. And I was like, well, where am I coming out to? No, nobody has talked to me.
Yeah.
Because you think I should come out, hey, man, they got 3 rounds. It'll be better because next year they're going to 2. You're not going to have a chance next year. And I have always been a person that bet on me.
That's tricky. So you really made a decision on your own.
Yeah.
Sheesh, that's a big decision, man.
Yeah.
So you came out and you wound up making the right. You bet on yourself.
Bet on me.
Bet on yourself. Mm-hmm. I think we've coined that nowadays. You know, it's a cool thing to bet on yourself, but to really do it is something different.
That's right.
So if we talked about your journey in the NBA, this would be a 2-hour long interview. Right. So if you could sum up what it was like getting drafted to Phoenix and your first couple of years, like getting adjusting to that lifestyle.
It was amazing, man. It's a dream come true. You know, to hear your name called, to all of a sudden go from obscurity to now you're on everybody's radar. When I say everybody, I mean the most important people. My first summer in the LA Summer League, I'm playing, I'm leading the league in scoring, tied with David Robinson actually. And I get invited to go to Magic Johnson's Midsummer Night Magic's party. All the pros are coming in. Michael Jordan's coming in. Mm-hmm. I'm doing so well out there, Jerry Krause has started talking to my agent. If Phoenix doesn't want to sign this kid, we'll take him. Well, obviously he had talked to Michael about it because when Mike came in a party, I'm sitting at Magic's table. I get up to shake Mike's hand and he introduces himself to me. Mm-hmm. He was like, you're Mike Morrison. I heard a lot about you. And I'm floor on the ground staring at this guy.
That's
like
MJ.
There's no freaking way he knows who I am.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, I heard some good things about you. I heard they're trying to get you to come to Chicago. He was like, don't think about it, son. I got that locked down. He was like, but you know, you can learn a lot if you came. He said, but let me tell you something. He said, never, ever take this for granted because it can be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he was right.
Nice.
So I was in the NBA a total of 4 years, and I played with 5 different teams over 4 years. So bounced around a lot, was traded and cut a few times, and then I spent 9 seasons overseas. After playing overseas, that's where life really begins, because now, what are you going to do? My whole life's identity I thought at that time, had been wrapped around me being a basketball player.
For sure.
And coming to the reality in 2001 is when I retired. What are you going to do now? What skills I had developed. I spent so much time honing my skills as a basketball player, I didn't think about life afterwards.
Wow. Yeah. And I want to get into that. But first, I want to take a quick break, and we'll get right back into the interview. I want everybody who's watching to go on their Instagram and follow the Dreamer Expo on Instagram. That's _Dreamer_Expo. That is the official Instagram for the Dreamers Expo coming to Greenville, South Carolina in 2023. You will be able to get more info and updates there. And if you are a dreamer, this event will be for you. Again, follow the Dreamer Expo on Instagram. That's _Dreamer_Expo. All right, so we're back here with Coach Mike. I appreciate it. So you were just explaining about finding that new identity. And my next question was, what throughout your 4 years in the league and then 9 years overseas, what time would you say you started to kind of search for that other Mike outside of basketball?
Unfortunately, I didn't start while I was playing. I thought it was never going to end. And I wasn't prepared for what happened when it ended. It didn't end because of injury. It didn't end because of some traumatic life experience, nothing like that. It literally ended on my terms. My last year in Germany was a really good time. I was able to help a young player who was trying to get overseas come and play. I just felt like, I was done. I had done everything I thought I wanted to do. I helped the team that I was playing with, even though we were in the Bundesliga, I helped them stay, which is big. Was able to get my bonus money, and I was like, I ain't got to work for a little while. I can just go home and take some time off, which I did, unfortunately. And, it was amazing because I had no plan of what I was going to do. I just let life happen. And with life happening, I fell into some depression. I fell into some anxiety. And I'm a man who, since the 8th grade, believed that I was a believer. I had faith. I had a higher power. I had somebody I could believe in, but now I had to really believe in without basketball. And then I was able to really see where I was kind of off balance.
Right. And I appreciate you sharing that. So you do coach, you do train. When did that come about? And if I'm missing any other off the court move that you've made and transitioned into, you can let me know. But yeah, when did that come about to go into that industry?
So I actually retired twice. So in 95, I stopped playing for 2 years. And during that time, I got a job with an organization called Sports World Ministries. While I was in the NBA, one of our chaplains was a guy by the name of Bill Alexson Bill was with the Washington Wizards as well as a guy named Joel Friedman. And he introduced me when I stopped playing to a guy named Doc Eshelman, who was in charge for starting all the NBA's chaplaincy services. Doc actually started for the NFL first, and then they came over to the NBA. Well, they flew me out to Indianapolis, and my major in college was communications. Journalism, public relations. Speaking was something that kind of came natural, and I really got into it my sophomore year of college after Lynn's death. One of our alumni, who was a teacher at one of the elementary schools, asked me to come down and share my story. Andy Ciafalo, who was my communications professor, who was the chair of our board, had heard me speak in contact speaking class. And he was like, this guy can really speak.
Yeah.
This could be therapy for him dealing with Lynn's death if he would go to schools.
Oh,
so they
for sure.
literally took me around to different schools. And I got connected in college with an organization called Drug Free Athletes of America. So I started speaking for them. Put it aside, focusing back on basketball. But when I retired, got a call from Joel and Bill, and went down to Indianapolis, and they trained me with the Toastmasters and showed us how to share our testimonies in public places without being without proselytizing, without usually using the name of Jesus or saying anything that would separate or get in trouble with the separation of church and school, because we went to a lot of public schools.
For sure.
So I actually started speaking with them in 1995. And I worked all the way up until 2020.
Nice.
Right when the pandemic hit, I was still doing stuff for them on the side.
For sure.
And it was a great experience. I loved doing it. The hardest part for me is I'm a relationship guy. I like seeing things through. That's just who I am. And it was hard for me to go to these different cities. We'd fly in on a Sunday. We'd speak Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, usually 3 times a day. I started getting requested for doing afternoon or early morning things, so I was speaking anywhere from 5 to 6 times a day. I would get back on a plane that Thursday and come home, stay home Friday and Saturday, and back on the plane again on Sunday. I've got 4 kids. It became very taxing.
Yeah.
But it weighed on my heart and on my spirit to leave those kids. One of the things we would do is we would give them index cards to fill out, and we'd ask them 4 questions. How did you like my talk? What did you get out of my talk? How will you apply any of the things I said in my talk? And if there's one thing I could do for you right now, what is it? We work with a suicide prevention hotline nationally, and we would give their number out, and you would be amazed at some of the responses on the cards. There would be a line of kids. I had my basketball card and I signed the autographs, but hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kids I've seen in my experiences working with Sports World over the 15, 20 years I worked with them. But long story short, I couldn't get to all of them. And I'm trusting someone else to follow up. But this kid is telling me, your talk really touched me, and I was going to kill myself when I got home, but I'm not now. I can't go and follow up with that kid. I got to hand this off to you because they need me in another city. And that was just weighing on me. And I was like, I can't keep, it really would keep me up at night.
For sure.
You can pray for them, but I believe that faith without works is dead. I'm calling, checking up on the kid, making sure the person that said they would follow up would do it. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't, but what could I do? I literally worked that job into the transition of social media. So in my last 10 years with Sports World, now I can keep in contact with them.
Right. Because now it's in a good way. You got NBA players and mental health, and it's a thing that people acknowledge now, which is back in '95 and to 2000. Maybe it wasn't like that. I was little then.
Right.
But but that's awesome that you got to go through that transition into where we are now with social media. So speaking of social media, we're on the platform right now to be on social media. And that camera there, what advice would you give the younger generation coming up and just that's trying to pursue and being an athlete or get into any business venture after they're done playing?
Be intentional. In anything you do, be intentional. I'm going to give Oprah Winfrey credit for this because listening to a show that she did recently, she made the word intentional come to life for me. Every morning you wake up, have a intent. I'm going to take it a step further. Don't confuse motion with progress. You can walk in place and not go anywhere. But if you're intentional about what you're doing and where you're going, you will get somewhere. Now, in your development of skills and talents and habits, if you're intentional about what you're doing, now you're going to develop the skill to apply it. Now you'll understand and be able to apply not only the skill, but the understanding to what you're doing. So it is important, and if there's nothing else you've ever or you want to remember about me saying, please be intentional about what you're doing.
Man, I appreciate that. And I know you've been drafted before, but we actually going to draft you again into the Endure family, man. We got a gift from you. Shout out to our friends over at the Vault Retro Sports Store in Greenville, South Carolina. We heard that you We heard that you might like a certain baseball team.
Oh man.
So we got you something nice.
That's sweet.
From the
I
Endure
appreciate
family
that.
here, man. So yes.
Nice.
Appreciate it, Mike.
Love
so
it.
that's it for
Thank
the
you.
show. Make sure you guys come down into the vault and grab some of your favorite sports teams gear. Their address is 213 North Main Street in Greenville, South Carolina. And again, Mike, I appreciate you.
Bright, but it depends on what you do. Just believe up in yourself and keep on doing what you do. If you put in all the work, then the results are coming soon. I never doubted you, you had a passion for this. A diamond always shine, you had a flash in this bitch. You different from the rest, can't put you last in this bitch. Just keep on going forward, ain't no crash in this ship. Ain't no crash in this ship. You gon' take off like a jet. Just keep applying pressure, keep your foot up on their neck. We know your